Lieutenant Sarah Martinez stared at the wedding invitation in her hands, the elegant gold lettering blurring as tears formed in her eyes. Her younger sister Emma was getting married in 3 days, and Sarah had been looking forward to this moment for months. She had already bought her bridesmaid dress, practiced her maid of honor speech, and even arranged for a 2-week leave from her military base. But now everything had changed. Colonel Williams had just handed her urgent deployment orders that would take her thousands of miles away from her family's celebration. A critical situation had developed in a conflict zone, and her specialized skills in communications and intelligence were desperately needed. The mission was classified, but Sarah understood its importance from the colonel's grave expression. "I know this is terrible timing, Martinez," Colonel Williams said, his voice heavy with sympathy. "But you're one of our best. The situation requires immediate attention, and frankly, there's no one else I trust with this assignment." Sarah's mind raced between duty and family. She thought about Emma's excited phone calls over the past months, describing every detail of the wedding planning. Her sister had been dreaming of this day since they were little girls, playing dress-up in their grandmother's old clothes. Sarah was supposed to be Emma's rock, her protector, just as she had been throughout their childhood. Growing up in a small town in Texas, the Martinez sisters had been inseparable. After their father left when Sarah was 12 and Emma was 8, Sarah had naturally stepped into a protective role. She helped Emma with homework, walked her to school, and made sure she felt safe and loved. When Sarah decided to join the military at 18, Emma cried for days, but she eventually understood that her big sister wanted to serve something bigger than herself. Now, 8 years later, Sarah found herself torn between 2 equally important commitments. Her military oath meant everything to her, but so did her family. She picked up her phone to call Emma, then put it down again. How could she explain that she wouldn't be there for the most important day of her sister's life? Base was unusually quiet that evening as Sarah walked to the chapel, seeking some peace and clarity. She had always found comfort in prayer during difficult times, and this decision would affect not just her, but everyone she loved. The weight of responsibility felt crushing as she knelt in the empty pews, asking for guidance. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Only 3 more days. I can't wait to see you in your bridesmaid dress. Mom is so excited to have both her girls together again. Love you, big sis." Sarah's heart broke a little more as she realized she had no choice. The mission briefing had made it clear that lives hung in the balance, and her expertise could make the difference between success and tragedy. She had sworn an oath to protect and serve, even when it meant personal sacrifice. That night she called her mother instead of Emma, knowing that the conversation would be one of the hardest of her life. The phone rang 3 times before Maria Martinez answered, her voice warm and cheerful. "Sarah, I was just thinking about you. Emma and I were looking at the seating arrangements, and we put you right next to Grandma Rosa. She's been asking about you every day." Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she had to say. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear." The change in her daughter's tone immediately caught Maria's attention. "What's wrong, mija? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but I won't be able to make it to Emma's wedding. I just received deployment orders and I have to leave tomorrow morning." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Sarah could hear her mother's sharp intake of breath, followed by the sound of a chair scraping against the floor as Maria sat down heavily. "But the wedding is in 3 days, Maria whispered, her voice breaking. "Emma has been planning this for a year. You're her maid of honor. How can they do this to you? To our family?" Sarah closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "It's an emergency. Deployment, Mom. I can't discuss the details, but it's important. Lives depend on it." "What about Emma's life? What about our family?" Maria's voice rose with emotion. "You've already missed so many things, Sarah. Emma's graduation, my birthday, last year Christmas, and now this, the most important day of her life." The words hit Sarah like physical blows because they were true. Military life had cost her countless family moments, and each absence had left its mark. She remembered Emma's face via video call during her college graduation, trying to smile while clearly wishing her sister could be there in person. "Do you want me to tell Emma or will you?" Maria asked, her voice now quiet and resigned. "I'll call her," Sarah said. "I owe her that much." "She's going to be heartbroken, Sarah. You know how much you mean to her." After hanging up with her mother, Sarah sat in her small barracks room, staring at Emma's contact on her phone. She knew that making this call would change something fundamental in their relationship. Emma had always been understanding about Sarah's military commitments, but this felt different. This was her wedding day. When Emma answered, her voice was bright and excited. "Sarah, perfect timing. I just tried on my dress one more time and it's absolutely perfect. Wait until you see it." "Emma, I need to talk to you about something serious." "Oh, no, please don't tell me you're having second thoughts about the speech. We practiced it last month and it was beautiful." "It's not about the speech. I received deployment orders today. I have to leave in the morning, and I won't be able to make it to your wedding." The line went completely silent. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in her ears as she waited for Emma's response. "You're joking, right?" Emma's voice was small and confused. "This is some kind of military humor I don't understand." "I'm not joking, Emma. I'm so sorry. If there was any way to get out of this, I would, but I can't." The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "But you promised you'd be here. You promised you'd give the speech about how we used to play wedding with our dolls. You promised you'd help me get ready." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she listened to her sister cry. "I know I promised, and I'm breaking that promise. I hate myself for it." "Is this mission more important than me?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Nothing is more important than you," Sarah replied. "But sometimes we have to do things that hurt the people we love most. I took an oath, Emma. People's lives are at stake." The conversation ended with Emma saying she needed time to process everything. Sarah spent the rest of the night packing her gear and trying to memorize every detail of the wedding photos Emma had shared with her, knowing she would miss creating new memories with her family. The transport plane lifted off at dawn, carrying Sarah and her team toward a region she had only seen in intelligence briefings. As the familiar landscape of Texas disappeared below the clouds, she felt a piece of her heart staying behind with her family. The mission briefing had been more serious than anything she had encountered in her 8 years of service. Captain Rodriguez, her commanding officer for this deployment, sat across from her in the plane's cargo hold. "I know this was short notice, Martinez. Command wouldn't have pulled you from leave unless the situation was critical." Sarah nodded, checking her communications equipment for the third time. "What can you tell me about what we're walking into, sir?" "Intelligence suggests a major escalation is imminent in the border region. Our allies have been requesting support for weeks, but the situation deteriorated overnight. A terrorist cell has taken control of strategic positions, and civilian populations are at risk. Your job will be to establish secure communications between our forces and coordinate evacuation efforts if necessary." The weight of responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders as she realized that her expertise in communications and intelligence could indeed save lives. Her ability to speak 3 languages fluently and her experience in crisis management had made her indispensable for this particular mission. Meanwhile, back in Texas, Emma was going through the motions of final wedding preparations while struggling with her sister's absence. The wedding planner, Mrs. Henderson, noticed Emma's distracted demeanor as they did a final walkthrough of the community hall where the reception would take place. "Everything looks perfect, dear," Mrs. Henderson said, adjusting a flower arrangement. "The photographer will be here early tomorrow to capture the getting ready photos with your sister." "Actually, my sister won't be here," Emma said quietly. "She was deployed yesterday." Mrs. Henderson's face fell. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. On your wedding day, that must be devastating." Emma's best friend Jessica, who had stepped in as the replacement maid of honor, put her arm around Emma's shoulders. "We're going to make this day beautiful for you, with or without Sarah. She would want you to be happy." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with celebrating the happiest day of her life while her sister was potentially in danger somewhere far away. She had grown up hearing stories of Sarah's military service, but the reality of what that meant had never felt so immediate and frightening. That evening, Emma sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by wedding gifts and cards from family and friends. She picked up a framed photo of her and Sarah from last Christmas, the last time they had been together in person. Sarah was wearing her dress uniform, looking proud and strong, while Emma wore a red sweater their grandmother had knitted. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This is Captain Rodriguez, your sister's commanding officer. I wanted you to know that Lieutenant Martinez spoke of you constantly during our flight. Her love for you is evident to everyone here. I know she wishes she could be with you tomorrow." Emma stared at the message, not sure whether to feel comforted or more worried. The fact that Sarah's commanding officer was reaching out to her family suggested that the mission was more dangerous than Sarah had let on. Michael, Emma's fiancé, found her sitting on the bed with tears in her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Besides the obvious, I mean. I keep thinking about all the times Sarah protected me when we were kids," Emma said. "When Dad left, she became like a second parent to me. She taught me how to ride a bike, helped me with my homework, scared away boys who were mean to me. And now she's somewhere dangerous and I can't protect her." "Maybe this is her way of protecting you too," Michael said gently. "Maybe she's out there making sure the world is safer for families like ours." As Emma fell asleep that night, she whispered a prayer for her sister's safety, not knowing that thousands of miles away, Sarah was doing the same thing for her family back home. Both sisters were thinking about the bond that had sustained them through years of separation and challenge, hoping it would be strong enough to survive this latest test. Emma woke up on her wedding day to the sound of her mother crying softly in the kitchen. Through her bedroom window, she could see the perfect blue sky that she and Sarah had always dreamed would grace her wedding day. The irony wasn't lost on her that everything about the day was exactly as planned, except for the most important person missing. Maria was standing at the kitchen counter, holding Sarah's bridesmaid dress, when Emma found her. "I keep expecting her to walk through that door," Maria whispered. "She's never missed anything this important before." "She didn't want to miss it, Mama," Emma said, taking the dress from her mother's hands. "I was angry last night, but I understand now. Sarah has always put others before herself, even when it hurts." The morning passed in a blur of hair appointments, makeup, and photographs that felt incomplete without Sarah's presence. Jessica did her best to fill the role of maid of honor, but everyone could feel the absence of the person who should have been there, helping Emma into her dress and calming her pre-wedding nerves. At the church, Grandma Rosa sat in the front, pew clutching a photo of Sarah in her uniform. "She's here in spirit," she told anyone who would listen. "My granddaughter is serving her country, just like her grandfather did during the war." The ceremony itself was beautiful, but Emma found herself scanning the crowd throughout the service, hoping against hope that Sarah might have found a way to come home. When Father Miguel asked if anyone objected to the union, Emma held her breath. For a moment, almost expecting to hear her sister's voice calling out from the back of the church. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, Sarah was crouched in a communications bunker, coordinating with Allied forces as reports of civilian movements came in from multiple sources. The situation had escalated exactly as intelligence had predicted, and her team was working around the clock to prevent a humanitarian crisis. "Martinez, I need you to establish contact with the evacuation coordinators at Checkpoint 7. Captain Rodriguez called out over the noise of radio chatter and distant explosions. As Sarah worked her radio equipment, she noticed that her watch showed it was exactly the time Emma's ceremony should be starting back home. For just a moment, she allowed herself to picture her sister walking down the aisle in the dress they had chosen together during Sarah's last leave. "Lieutenant, we've got movement on the eastern border," Sergeant Thompson reported. "Large convoy heading toward the civilian settlement." Sarah snapped back to the present, her personal feelings pushed aside by the urgency of the situation. "Roger that. Patching you through to air support now." Back in Texas, the wedding reception was in full swing at the community hall. The building was decorated exactly as Emma had envisioned, with white roses and twinkling lights creating a magical atmosphere. But as Emma sat at the head table, she couldn't help but stare at the empty chair beside her, where Sarah should have been sitting. During the dinner, Michael stood to give a speech about love and commitment, but it was Jessica's impromptu toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. I know Emma's sister Sarah can't be here tonight because she's serving our country with honor and courage, but I want to read something Sarah asked me to share with all of you. Jessica pulled out a folded piece of paper that had been tucked inside Sarah's bridesmaid dress. Emma, from the time you were 8 years old and I was 12, you've been the light of my life. I may not be there to dance with you tonight, but I want you to know that every step you take, every smile you share, every moment of joy you feel today is a gift that makes my sacrifice worthwhile. You are my heart, little sister, and distance cannot change that. Dance for both of us tonight and know that somewhere in the world I'm thinking of you with nothing but love and pride. There wasn't a dry eye in the hall as Emma stood up, her wedding dress rustling as she walked to the center of the dance floor. The DJ played the song that she and Sarah had chosen for their sister dance, and Emma danced alone, her eyes closed, imagining her sister's presence. But just as the song reached its crescendo, the distant rumble of heavy vehicles could be heard, approaching the hall. At first, people assumed it was late wedding guests or perhaps a delivery truck, but the sound grew louder and more ominous, causing several guests to step outside to investigate. What they saw would change the course of Emma's wedding day and create a story that would be told for generations in their small Texas town. The rumbling grew louder until it was impossible to ignore. Wedding guests began moving toward the windows and doors of the community hall, their conversations turning from celebration to concern. Michael was the first to step outside, followed by several other men from the wedding party. What they saw approaching the hall was unlike anything their small Texas town had ever witnessed. A convoy of military vehicles was making its way down Main Street, led by 2 armored personnel carriers, and followed by several trucks carrying what appeared to be fully equipped soldiers. The convoy moved with purpose and precision, clearly not lost or passing through by accident. "Is that the National Guard?" someone whispered. "Those aren't guard vehicles," replied Tom Martinez, Emma's uncle and a Vietnam veteran. "That's active, military, heavy equipment." Inside the hall, Emma was still on the dance floor when Jessica rushed up to her. "Emma, you need to come outside. There's something happening." "What kind of something?" Emma asked, her wedding dress making it difficult to move quickly. "Military vehicles. Lots of them. They're heading this way." Emma's heart immediately jumped to thoughts of Sarah. Had something happened to her sister? Was this how military families were notified of casualties? She gathered up her dress and hurried outside, where nearly all the wedding guests had now assembled. The convoy came to a halt directly in front of the community hall. The lead vehicle's engine shut off, and the sudden silence felt deafening after the rumble of approaching motors. Emma stood frozen, her wedding bouquet still in her hand as soldiers began emerging from the vehicles. The commanding officer, a stern-looking colonel, approached the group of wedding guests with measured steps. His uniform was crisp and formal, and his expression was unreadable. Behind him, more soldiers were organizing themselves in formation, their presence both impressive and intimidating. "I'm looking for the Martinez family," the colonel announced, his voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. Emma's mother stepped forward, her face pale with fear. "I'm Maria Martinez. Is this about my daughter Sarah? Is she okay?" The colonel's expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Martinez, Lieutenant Sarah Martinez is safe and performing her duties admirably. I'm Colonel Patterson, and I'm here on a rather unusual mission." "What kind of mission brings tanks to a wedding?" Michael asked, stepping protectively closer to Emma. "Not tanks, sir. Armored personnel carriers," Colonel Patterson corrected with what might have been the hint of a smile. "And we're here because Lieutenant Martinez completed an extraordinary act of service last night that prevented a significant loss of civilian life in a crisis zone." Her quick thinking and communication skills helped coordinate the successful evacuation of over 300 people from an imminent attack. The wedding guests exchanged confused glances. While they were proud to hear of Sarah's heroism, they couldn't understand why this required a military visit to Emma's wedding. "Colonel," Patterson continued, "what you may not know is that Lieutenant Martinez's actions came at great personal cost. She was wounded during the mission while ensuring that communication lines remained open until the last civilian was evacuated safely. Emma gasped, her bouquet falling to the ground. Wounded? How badly? Where is she? She's receiving medical treatment and will make a full recovery, the colonel assured her quickly. But her actions went far beyond the call of duty, and the President of the United States has decided to award her the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism. That's wonderful, Maria said, tears streaming down her face. But I still don't understand why you're all here. Colonel Patterson stepped aside, and from behind the line of soldiers, a familiar figure emerged. Sarah Martinez, her left arm in a sling but otherwise looking strong and healthy, walked toward her family in her dress uniform. I was told there was a wedding I wasn't supposed to miss, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. Emma stood frozen for a moment, unable to believe what she was seeing. Then she hiked up her wedding dress and ran toward her sister, not caring about the mud or the military audience. The two sisters collided in an embrace that brought cheers from both the wedding guests and the assembled soldiers. How are you here? Emma sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. I thought you were in a war zone. The mission ended successfully yesterday, Sarah explained, holding her sister tightly with her good arm. When Colonel Patterson learned about your wedding, he arranged for a special transport. Apparently, preventing an international incident earns you a few favors. The wedding guests erupted in applause and cheers as the two sisters held each other. But the surprises weren't over yet. Colonel Patterson raised his hand for attention once more. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention for just a moment longer. Lieutenant Martinez's heroic actions have not only earned her a medal, but they've also earned her a promotion to captain, effective immediately. And since she insisted that she couldn't properly celebrate her sister's wedding in a combat zone, we decided to bring a little military tradition to Texas. What happened next would become the stuff of legend in their small Texas town. Colonel Patterson gave a signal, and the soldiers began forming two precise lines leading from the military vehicles to the community hall entrance. This was creating an honor guard, a military tradition typically reserved for the most formal occasions. Captain Martinez, Colonel Patterson said formally, would you escort your sister back to her wedding reception? Sarah looked down at her dress uniform, then at Emma's beautiful wedding gown. I'm not exactly dressed for a wedding reception, sir. Nonsense, Emma laughed through her tears. You're dressed perfectly. You're here, and that's all that matters. The wedding guests watched in amazement as Sarah, despite her injured arm, offered Emma her good elbow in the traditional escort position. Together, the two sisters walked through the honor guard of soldiers, who stood at perfect attention as the bride and her maid of honor passed between them. Inside the hall, the celebration took on a dimension that no one could have imagined. The soldiers, initially stiff and formal, gradually relaxed as the wedding guests welcomed them with typical Texas hospitality. Tables were quickly rearranged to accommodate the unexpected military guests, and extra food was brought out from the kitchen. Grandma Rosa, who had served as a nurse during World War II, was particularly delighted to chat with the young soldiers about their service. You boys remind me of my late husband, she told them. He had that same sense of duty and honor. The DJ, initially flustered by the unexpected turn of events, rose to the occasion by playing a mix of wedding classics and patriotic songs that honored both the celebration and the military presence. When he played God Bless America, the entire hall joined in singing, creating a moment that many would later describe as profoundly moving. But perhaps the most touching moment came when Emma insisted that Sarah give the maid of honor speech she had originally planned. Sarah stood up carefully, favoring her injured arm, and looked out at the mixed crowd of wedding guests and soldiers. When Emma asked me to be her maid of honor, I promised her I would always be there to protect her, Sarah began, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. Last night, I learned that sometimes protecting the people we love means serving something bigger than ourselves. Emma, you taught me that love isn't diminished by distance or duty. It grows stronger. She paused, looking directly at her sister. I missed your ceremony, but I didn't miss your wedding. Because a wedding isn't just one moment or one day. It's the promise to love someone through all of life's challenges, separations, and reunions. Michael, you're not just marrying my sister. You're joining a family that understands sacrifice, honors service, and never gives up on each other." The applause that followed was thunderous, with soldiers and civilians alike showing their appreciation for Sarah's words and her service. As the evening continued, something magical happened. The formal military protocol gradually gave way to genuine celebration. Soldiers danced with bridesmaids, shared stories with the groomsmen, and posed for countless photos with the wedding party. One young sergeant who had grown up on a farm in Iowa spent the evening comparing agricultural techniques with Emma's farmer relatives. The traditional bouquet toss became an unforgettable moment when Emma threw her flowers directly to Sarah, who caught them awkwardly with her good hand. "Your turn next, Captain Martinez," someone shouted from the crowd, causing Sarah to blush deeply. Late in the evening, as the formal reception began winding down, Emma found herself alone with Sarah for the first time since the convoy's arrival. They sat together on the steps outside the hall, Emma's wedding dress spread around them like a white cloud, Sarah's medals catching the light from the hall's windows. "I can't believe you're really here," Emma said quietly. "This morning I thought my wedding day was ruined because you were missing. Now it's the most amazing day of my life." Sarah winced slightly as she adjusted her injured arm. "I almost didn't make it, Emma. The mission was more dangerous than I let on when I called you. There were moments when I thought I might never see you again. But you're here now. That's what matters." "I'm here now," Sarah agreed. "And I want you to know that even when I was in the middle of that crisis, thinking about you gave me strength. Knowing that you were starting your new life, building something beautiful, reminded me why the work we do matters." Emma leaned against her sister's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Sarah. I was hurt when you first told me you couldn't come, but now I understand. You saved 300 people. You're a hero." "We're both heroes," Sarah replied. "You've built a life full of love and hope. That's its own kind of service to the world." As the evening finally ended and the military convoy prepared to depart, Colonel Patterson approached the Martinez family one last time. "Captain Martinez has earned a month of leave following her medical recovery," he announced. "I believe she has some catching up to do with her family." The convoy departure was as impressive as its arrival, but now the soldiers waved goodbye like old friends rather than formal military personnel. Emma and Sarah stood together, watching the vehicles disappear into the Texas night. The story of the wedding that was saved by tanks and troops became legendary in their town. But for the Martinez family, it represented something deeper: the unbreakable bond between sisters, the meaning of true service, and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Emma's wedding day had become a celebration not just of her marriage, but of family, sacrifice, and the extraordinary ways that life can surprise us when we least expect it.